Hey folks, welcome to another episode of ASP.NET Core from Zero to Overkill. In this episode, we'll take a closer look at some of the authorization bits, namely roles, claims, and policies. So in the previous episode, while we were still working on the authorization service, we were focusing on internationalization, so we implemented multicultural support in the application. So we used resource files in a variety of ways, specific to views, specific to page models, as we were using and are using Razor pages, and inner classes of page models, and also shared resources among various parts of the application. And finally, we stored the cultural preference of the user in a cookie, so it sticks between requests. And today, we will get back to more authorization bits and take a look at roles, claims, and policies. It wasn't the plan for this episode. I was going to go back to the group service and start implementing some more stuff there. But as a viewer suggested, and it makes sense because we are here playing around with authorization, maybe we can just explore a little bit more. It will be used again in the APIs, but since we are here and working with Razor pages, we can take advantage of it and just get back to the subject immediately. So for the roles, claims, and policies, we will start by allowing access to a page using roles with some claims mixed in, because from my understanding, the recommended way to go around with this authorization stuff in ASP.NET Core is mostly around policies and claims, although roles still exist, but they are focusing more on policies and claims. So we are going to make like an hybrid where we use some claims to define roles, and we will use the authorize attribute to protect the access to a page. Then we'll only allow access to another page by using policies. And in this part, we'll take a look at some ways to declare that a policy is needed, so using the authorize attribute as well, but also on Razor pages conventions where we can define that a page or an area, a folder, all needs that authorization, like we did for the regular authorization, but in this case by applying policies. And we will see some ways to define policies. The easiest one probably is just on the configuration telling we require a certain claim for the policy to be fulfilled, or we can use the authorization handlers to check if the policy is fulfilled by the user's claims. We'll see all of that. I think there are more ways to define the policies, but I think these two are good enough for an introduction. And then, although we won't use it today, we'll just take a quick glance at the documentation for the existence of resource-based authorization. We won't use it today, but we'll probably use it in the future. But as we are on the subject, I just wanted to point out that it exists, so it's not forgotten. And finally, before starting, like I said in the previous videos, if they are being useful, please consider liking them, sharing them, and leaving feedback. Namely, this last one will help improving the videos, but all of them help because they let me know if this time investment is worth it, and also because with these better metrics, YouTube will hopefully recommend the videos to more people to see. And now, let's get to code. So to start with, so here's the docs that we'll probably take a look. And the application is already running. So these were the tests I was doing before. So let's start. Open here the project. The first thing we want, so we can test this, is, okay, we'll create a new page or a new folder. Call admin. I have no idea what to do here, so I'll just do some simple pages that to show if we can reach them or not. So make an admin page, add new Razor page. Okay, Razor page, index, use a layout. No, this is new. Okay. Okay, so let's see the page. Let's put here. Okay. So as it is right now, let's see, I'll put here authorize. Let's start with this. So authorize. So if we go to admin, we go back to login. I have no user yet, so I'll register a new one, someone. And we are here because we are authenticated. Now we'll get here, and to use roles, we can pass roles and the roles that are required to access this area. So I want the admin to access this area. And right now, access denied because I'm authorized, but I don't have that role. So let's add that role. To keep it simple, I'll just drop the database. It won't let me because it's connected. Let me stop this. Okay. We run this. The migrations will recreate the database. This is just to make it simpler. And now what we are going to do is going to the register page. And when it's the first user that's being registered, we'll make it admin automatically. Yes, it's not great, but for this demonstration, it's good enough. So let me just put here is first user, and eventually I need to reorganize this because this code is a bit too messy. So we'll await user manager dot users dot any using link or any async. Yes, any async cancellation token. Let's add it here. So is first user means not any. Okay. And now over here before the sign-in, this I think we must do this before the sign-in because we need to make sure the claims, roles, whatever are present in the database for when we do the sign-in. We must to store that in the cookie, or else it wouldn't be there. I haven't tested it, but I'm pretty sure we need to do it that way. So over here we can result equals user manager, there is an add to role async, which will create a role, which would add this user to a role that existed. It doesn't exist, but like I said, we will make a mix and we use claims instead while achieving mostly the same result, but not using role, but you know it exists. If you prefer to go down that route, you can use it, but I'll use add claim and the user and a new claim, and one of the constructors gets a type and a value. We can add the type we want or in the value, but there are already some predefined claim types, and there is one which is role. And even though we are passing a claim, because the claim is role, ASP.NET Core identity, authorization, whatever, we'll see that there is a claim called role and use it as a role. And now we can do something like admin. Okay. And now if not add claim result succeeded, to do okay, so we are adding the claim, and now when we register the user, let's get back to login, or better yet, let me edit the cookies, delete everything. Let's try to go to admin. As for login, it doesn't exist, so register new user, someone, and now we can get to the admin area. So if we can take a look at the database, new console. Let me check the tables. So if we go to select roles, we have nothing because we didn't add really a role. What we had was ASP.NET user claims, and there is the claim for the user with this ID. So even though we aren't really using claims, using roles, it acts as if it was. So that's why we put this here and it works. Like I said, if you really prefer claims, roles, and would like to go to the role table and see there's something, there would need to be two steps. So you would need to do the user manager dot add to role to add the user to a role, but that role needed to exist. So I think it would be in the, I'll just show you here. So I role manager of identity role, because I didn't define anything, of identity role something, and here you would need to do create a new role. So you will need to create a role before using the add to role on the user. But because we are using claims, we don't need this. But if you really want to use the roles, you can do it like this. Now with the roles, let's go to the try to check out policies. Let me close this. We'll create a new page. So we'll create a new page. We'll say that is attribute policy protected. I have no better idea for a name. And on the over here, yeah, the title will be enough. And in this case, we'll put here again authorize. And then instead of role, we put policy. And we'll say sample policy. And now we go to the startup, and somewhere where I don't remember, somewhere I think it's services.add authorization, yes, options, add policy, and we define, let me see how I named it, sample policy. Here policy dot require claim admin. So an admin user with the user with the claim admin will fulfill the sample policy, which is required to get here. Okay, so we should be able to get here, or admins, and we get access denied. Why? That was unexpected. Let me see. Oh, of course. We just said the value, but we need claim types role. So now it should work. We want a sample policy to require a claim of type role to have the value admin. So okay, now we are in the page, and it's very similar to the roles. We just changed here to policy. It's just like semantically different because the policy is not, may or may not be like a role, but you can achieve exactly the same result. Now let's see how to do in another way. We'll create another page, Uh, convention policy protected, which will be basically the same. We'll just protect it in a different way. So here in the startup, where we define this authorize folder, can options.conventions authorize page, which will be admin slash, what was the name? And there should be, yeah, a policy. So instead of doing that, we can just put here sample policy. If we go here, we can get here, but if I change this to another thing, I don't know, will this throw an exception? Okay, because this policy doesn't exist. Let's say that this policy requires a claim that is admin1. So now we should get a access denied. Yes. So it is working. We didn't need to do that. So this is, for this case, just a page is probably not useful, but like we did for this folder, we can do this for another folder, another area, where you say all of this requires a certain policy. And then the attributes and stuff like that will override this. So if we put this here, and then imagine the API, we say that the API always needs to be authorized, but then we say that a specific part, a specific action, controller, etc. Requires just one more thing. So we can just put the attribute and it will override these conventions. But yeah, these are a couple of ways to defining what policies are required to access a page. While seeing how to protect this page, we use the simplest part that I mentioned, the require claim. So over here, require claim, but we can also use authorization handlers. Let me get this back to yeah, it's working. So instead of doing this, let's say we want this to be another sample policy. So it won't work right now because that policy doesn't exist. Let's create an authorization handler. Let's start by taking a look at the docs. So it should be over here in the policy. So policy based. Okay, I'm talking about authorization handler, but probably I wanted to talk about the requirement and the handler. Okay, so if you see here, authorization in this case, it's saying to the policy that it requires something, in this case minimum age, and the requirements are basically implement this interface, and then we must create an authorization handler to check that requirement. Of course, for what we are doing right now, just for test, this will be overkill, but it can be used for something more interesting. But let's try then. So let's start by going here. Let's create a folder. Let me think. Yeah, policies, then new folder, requirements, handlers. I will eventually delete all of this, so don't follow exactly what I'm doing in terms of organization. I'm just doing it for the demo. But so in the requirement we want a new class. Let me check. That will be admin requirement, which will implement this one. Constructor. I want to implement the interface. Why aren't you helping? No, because there's nothing. Okay. Okay, it's empty. Not very interesting, but let's make it more interesting. Let's call it user name requirement. And it will be called username pattern, because of reasons. I just want to complicate this a little more to not have this empty. This will be getter only. We have this one. Now we'll create an handler. Let me get the interface for the handler or the class. Name requirement handler. And over here we can do whatever we want. So we can go to the context, user, identity name, and maybe like is match. Go to the signature, input pattern, requirement pattern. If is match, we go to the context and there should be a method where we say that the requirement succeeded. And now, because we aren't doing anything async, we can return task, completed task. Now we go back to startup and let me see, where do we add this one? So we add, let's go over here. What? And we can also add options, add policy, another sample policy, point dot policy. Let me check. Policy dot requirements dot add and new username requirement, and in this we need a pattern, so I'll say if I'm not mistaken, someone if I'm not mistaken with my regex patterns, this should catch our someone. And over here we add services dot add singleton. Let me check. So authorization handler, and according to the docs this should work, I think. So let's try to get here again. Seems to be working. Let's mess up the regex. And the server is restarting, still restarting, access denied. Okay, seems to be working just fine. So this is a really simple requirement, but I think it's good enough for us to see that we can do more complex things. And in this handler, like you saw, it's async, so you can even go to the database as we are registering it in the container. We can inject dependencies in it. Careful with this. I used singleton because it has no dependencies, but probably if you want to go to the database, singleton is not the way to go. But yeah. And okay, I think this works. Let me get this back. Seems nice. So there are more things you can do with this, but I think this basic overview is enough. So it's not very hard, and the code, it's already there. So if you don't require something as complex as these requirements, maybe these claims and will suffice. If you just want to use roles, then this is more than enough. You can use roles in the other way, or in this way using claims, which probably is better because maps immediately for these claims, and if you want to migrate to policies eventually, you can take advantage of it. So to wrap up, like I mentioned here, I just want to take a quick look at the existence of resource-based authorization. We are not going to use it today, but we are going to use it eventually. So if you see here the resource-based authorization. So in this case, imagine when we will need to protect access to a group, so only the members of the group can see it, and probably just some members can do changes or certain kinds of changes. So in that case, there will be this service, authorization service. And in this case, it won't be as declarative as we are doing right now, because we are just saying you can access this page or not. In this case, it's more like can I access this page for this particular resource. So in this case, you see, we must invoke an authorization service with authorize, tell it the user and in this case the resource, the document that he wants to change, and the policy that he requires. And over here we need the handler, which is the same as we saw before, but in this case it will get the resource as well, not only the requirement but the resource. And like you see, it checks if the user identity is the same as the author, and only then you can do this. So we'll do something very similar to this in the groups. Maybe not exactly, but very similar. So we already saw how to implement these requirements. The difference is having the resource. So there are more things here. But yeah, I just want to mention this existed, although I'm not using it today. And that's it. I think we were able to take a quick look at this. I think it's enough, but if you have any questions, please let me know. Not that I'm great professional in this area, but as you saw, it's rather easy, and mainly with these claims, by using the roles, it's a bit more cumbersome because you need to create the roles and stuff like that. But maybe you want to. And yeah, and I didn't create anything like to administrate. So you would have, for administration, you would have to create your own pages. I don't think there's anything existing. I'm not sure. Maybe Identity Server has something for that, not sure. But besides that, you'll probably just create your UI and access these services like the user manager and the role manager, like I showed you. So the role manager of identity role. It's the way to go. So you can check all the roles that exist. You can check the user, I think you can, or not. No, that's in a user manager. I think in the user manager you can check if the user, to get all the users that are in the role. Just let me check. If we go here to the register in the user manager, so we can get all the roles for a user. Get users in role, so we can provide a role and get all the users that implemented. So basically you would use this user manager and the role manager to edit and maintain that kind of information and make your own UI for that. But that's more like code for code, then it's not very hard, I would say. So I think that's it for this episode. Let me know if you have any questions, and hope to see you in the next one. See yous.